Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And today I have the most fascinating guest with me. His story is truly remarkable, and it's a story that every single one of us need to hear. His name is Mark Burnett. He is a former database programmer who applied his problem-solving brain toward recovering his own health after being diagnosed with several neurological disorders. He is the president of APDI, which stands for Alzheimer, Parkinson, and Dementia Impaired, as well as the founder and owner of My Brain Restore. Mark's story begins in 1958 at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and he's here to share his story with us. Mark, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Your story just really grabbed me for many, many reasons. Again, just 1958, Camp
Yeah.
Lejeune, and just tell us what happened.
Well, in 1958, my mom, I should back up and say my father was a master sergeant in Camp Lejeune, and my mom was with him, beside him every time he moved to different bases and things like that. And we moved to Camp Lejeune, and within maybe 2 months of us, I should say them moving to Camp Lejeune, she got pregnant on base. And then I was born in October of 1958 at the base hospital. What I didn't know then, which many people know now, was that base was heavily contaminated with a chemical called TCE and another chemical people are probably familiar with is benzene, which is a component of gasoline. And it was bad, very bad. A matter of fact, the settlements considered from that base by Bloomberg law are supposed to exceed $21 billion.
Wow.
So it is a enormous situation down there. But it was put under the rug, kind of hidden, all those kind of things for quite some time. And unfortunately, when I was born, the first thing you did was hand me a baby bottle, and said here. And of course, that was made from the camp water, along with back then Carol syrup and a little carnation milk. That was the way they made it back then.
Oh my God.
They didn't have powder formula or nothing like that. And unfortunately, the football players and things that were there, the Marines, they didn't have Gatorade, so they drank water in huge amounts because that wasn't invented then.
So,
And
at what point did they figure out that this stuff was toxic?
Well, I think there were early indications. There was a NBC News special, which is up on YouTube. I think it's Forgotten Children or Babies of Camp Lejeune. I believe that's what it's called. It's on my website, mybrainrestore.com. People can click on my journey, and there's a link to it. But that's an independent story, and they talked about all the babies that died, birth defects, spontaneous abortion. There were a lot of women that were involved in one division that just cleaned rifles and guns, and they used TCE. They did not use masks. They did not use gloves, and they absorbed this chemical, which is absolutely horrible chemical, causes birth defects, things like that. But more importantly, later in life, it causes Parkinson's, which I eventually developed. I knew I had neurological problems when I was young. I had root canals in all my teeth, which was horrible because they were so sensitive. I had other neurological issues, but no doctor could figure it out. At that time, everything was hidden. The government hadn't released anything. Then the government hired their own group, the government, to do their own report, which they did a great job on. They proved that the wells were contaminated. They did all this. But now the DOJ, who's involved in the lawsuit component, says, oh, all those reports were wrong. It's like, wait a minute, it's the same group.
Oh my God.
So it's become a nightmare for a lot of us. There's been a lot of people that passed away from all sorts of different diseases. And statistically, what that government group said was when they tested Camp Lejeune against any other military base, Camp Lejeune had a 70% higher amount of Parkinson's than any other base tested.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now my question would be is, okay, now that this has come forward, people know now, they got the reports and everything. And as far as this generation of babies and, their parents too, who are drinking the water and all of these neurological, diseases or disorders, and I'm
Right.
sure cancer rates and stuff off the
Yes,
chart,
off the chart.
what steps were taken to heal these people or to, do some
Well, the
research
steps
to
that
help?
were taken at that time were cover up. They
Uh-huh.
didn't heal anyone. They even had a brochure that one of the commanders put out that said basically there's nothing wrong with our water, everything's fine. Now the DOJ is fighting back like crazy, saying that, well, you have to prove you drank the water. Well, how can you be on a Marine base in the middle of North Carolina and not drink water? It's a
That
little
was back,
warm.
yeah, and that was back in the day when we didn't walk around with bottles or, of
No,
water all the time.
there
No.
wasn't. No, but surprisingly, the Marine base, they had what they called buffaloes. And these buffaloes were giant tanks of water that would go out in the field with the soldiers. Well, they filled them from the same wells. And then when the soldiers were, practicing and doing, they'd hit these buffaloes up. And on one of my websites, actually, I have one of the guys pouring water over a guy's head. And I just look at it and go, he's just poured contaminated water on top
Oh
of that
my
guy's head. Well,
God.
it was interesting for the newspaper. It actually spelled out how much, this water had gotten around and absorbed into people's skin and drank it, aerolized in showers. Everybody took showers after you get off the
Mm.
field. I swam in the pools. I was a little kid, but my mom was like, you will teach a baby to be drown proof. That was her number one rule.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very serious about that. So when I was a baby, I was put in the Camp Lejeune pools from the get go. For her, my mom, it was a great thing to see that, you learn how not to drown and things like that. And, it made sense. But looking back at it, wow, that was really a problem. And I didn't realize any of this quite until when I was 13 years old. I asked my mom, why don't I have any brothers or sisters?
Mm-hmm.
I don't, you start going to school, you start to realize, wait a minute, everyone else has got brothers and sisters, why don't I? And she set me down. She's a Marine Corps mom,
Mm-hmm.
so she was like, okay, let me tell you, I was there, my second and third trimester, I almost lost you. They literally told me to go home, lay down, and drink water.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Not knowing what she was drinking was making the problem worse. Okay. I mean, anything she would have bought out as a beverage or something like that would have solved that, obviously.
Right.
But because that happened, they then later in life recommended she get a hysterectomy. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that wasn't even the problem. All she had to do was move away from the base, and that
Right.
was it. So I did file on her behalf,
Oh, good.
open an estate and filed on my mom's behalf because of what happened to her and what
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. So we're both involved in that litigation, and I'm very close to a lot of the Marine groups and stuff that are involved there. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them has Parkinson's, and I developed Parkinson's, and because of it, I was basically told, by one doctor, this is, kind of the sentence that you're not going to win, you're going to die from this. So, I knew that doctor extremely well. And him and I would sometimes be very open with each other. So he
Mm-hmm.
was open about it. He goes, none of my patients make it through this. I'm going to send you to a neurologist. They're going to help you more. They put me on dopamine, which again, they just said they call it the honeymoon effect. It lasts for about 5 years, and then all of a sudden the sparks out of it. And he says the same thing here. I'm going to have to give you higher and higher doses until you just freeze and have all sorts of problems.
Oh.
And I was like, that can't be. I remember
Mm-hmm.
from something from my dad. He was a master sergeant, like I said, in the Marine in that Camp Lejeune. And he just said, if the enemy's attacking you, you got to kill the enemy. What's your enemy? And my enemy is Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was all about doing a lot of research,
Mm-hmm.
taking my database skills of research and building things from a blank screen, because that's what I learned to do. You look at a screen with a cursor blinking at you, and from that, it's just like writing a novel. You have to write, and in this
Mm-hmm.
case, you have to code. And in my case, I had to figure out research-wise around the world who was doing research on this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really when I came across a report in Japan where they had experimented on a plant I had never heard of before. It was a fruit and a seed. I was like, what even is that thing? And that's where I learned they cured all the mice from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia from this university in Japan, but they were working for Big Pharma. So what happened was they couldn't isolate the element that made it work. So they basically said, sorry, we're banning it because we can't make 10,000 a month, off everybody. And so to them, selling a supplement was not something they wanted to do. They're Big Pharma. But I got a hold of that report and I found out what they had. I finally figured out how to source it. I figured out how to make it here in the US in a way that would keep it ultra, ultra cold, because they pointed out that was one of the problems, one of the issues. And in January of 2025, I started taking it on my own. And I eventually got off the dopamine as quick as I could so I could make sure it was working purely. Not that my doctor liked all that. She goes, I don't know what that is. And I said, well, I'm going to go with the mice.
Right.
Cured them, so why couldn't it cure me? She goes, well, that doesn't always relate to humans. I'm like, well, let's find out. Yeah. So 6 months later, after being at stage 3 Parkinson, that's one step away from a walker. One step. I had fallen many times upstairs and downstairs at the same time. In other words, you bump into everything. I busted my toes. I started wearing steel-plated toes to stop hurting myself. And 6 months, I took those shoes, I hung them up. I bought myself a pair of tennis shoes and ran in the Michael J. Fox Marathon and got a medal at the end. And it felt so good.
I just have to ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just have to ask, what did you do with those steel toe shoes? Did you keep them they bronze the baby shoes and stuff and put them on the mantle?
I do have the bronze baby shoes, actually. I know exactly what you're talking about. I have a pair of those. But no, I did keep them. And it's always a reminder because they weighed 1.5 pounds each. I mean, they were very heavy duty shoes. But I found that and this is a good thing for people with Parkinson's, those heavy duty shoes available on Amazon for like $35 that weigh 1.5 pounds, have steel plated toes. They help you because as you lift your foot, you're not thinking about it, but it feels heavier. So your leg actually lifts itself a little higher. So I stopped tripping a little bit with those toes, steel plated toes. So they do help. But I've never put them back on. They sit there. They remind me all the time of what I was. But the tennis shoes remind me of what I am today.
So tell us about that, the marathon or that was a marathon, right?
Yeah, it was a marathon. Yeah, 2-mile marathon.
2-mile marathon. Okay. And this was what was the time frame that you did the marathon?
Yeah, that was July. I believe it was July 1st of 2025.
Wow. Okay. Was that
the
first?
June 1st. I said that wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Was that the first time you ran?
Oh, before that, I never jogged. I never ran. I'm a couch potato by, trade. And I'm on the computer all the time. Being a database programmer, you get stuck to your chair, But I was also dealing with Alzheimer's. So this is another thing that I had. So again, I had 2 neurological diseases. So I always kid people. They say, you have 2? I said, yeah, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I said, but it's okay. If I fall downstairs, I can't remember why.
So then what made you, what possessed you to say, I think I'm going to run this marathon?
Basically, after 6 months of taking the My Brain Restore product, which your people can see at mybrainrestore.com, which there's a lot of info there. And once I started taking, in the first couple of months, I started to realize first, the Alzheimer's started to go away. I had some really scary moments with Alzheimer's. I would forget things. So you get used to forgetting things. Why did I walk into the room? What was I going to do programming wise? But my most scariest was driving home. And I was driving home and I forgot how to go home. I had been down these roads for 20 years. Wow. And I could not remember where to turn. I got lost in neighborhoods. I was turning in neighborhoods I didn't know. And of course, being a man and part Marine, I didn't press Google, take me home. Typical, right? And typical guy. And but when I made it, it was just scared to death out of me. I mean, the combination of that and Parkinson's were literally my own death sentence, where I was like, I'm not going to be able to function. I'm going to be burdened on the family, and I don't want to do any of that. And that's when I started doing research, and when I started taking the product, and I made it into, I'm going to show you one here. This is the way we used to have it. So if we look at this is a powder, okay? And essentially it's just a powder, okay? And we made it this way. I made it this way in particular, made sure it was palatable with a foam sealed top so it sealed back up. And that's about a 30-day or maybe a 15-day supply. I take 2 jars per month. What the reason I did is a lot of Parkinson's patients can't swallow very well. So I knew that from the beginning, already. I had other people that I knew that had Parkinson's. And then you get into people with dementia, and boy, you give them something they don't like, they're going to throw it right at you in a second, right? So I made it palatable with pudding and yogurt, things that people would like, and it only took like 2 scoops of pudding, and you put in the 4 little scoopers of the ingredient, My Brain Restore, in there, mix it in. It mixes very well with that type of product. Has to be kept cold. That's incredibly important. You don't even want to drink hot coffee after it. Okay. It's important it stays in its cool stage. All right.
So could you actually put it like in ice cream?
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. No. You can put it on top of ice cream. It doesn't bother it at all. Yeah. Wow. Perfectly fine. So anything the patient likes, if you will, if you're a caregiver, or anything the person who takes it, enjoys that's cold, that's fine. I have one person who called and said, "Oh, I just put it in water, stir it up and drink it." I'm like, I'm not sure that tastes so good, but whatever works for you, so smoothies, stuff like that, all those kind of things.
And then when did this product come to be and go on the market?
Sure. Well, essentially, it kind of went on the market right at the Michael J. Fox Marathon. You got to realize I'm stage 3. I'm getting up there. If you look at the website, mybrainrestore.com, you can actually show me I'm in the middle holding up the banner to we're going to beat Parkinson's. It's strange and somewhat odd that I'm holding that banner up when I had actually felt I had beaten it. And then all the people in the Parkinson's group have those orange hats or orange bands, so you know who they are, and a lot of times people have their family run for them or friends, not them, because they can't. And here I am out jogging out there doing it. I'm passing up some of the other people, and I actually slowed down to catch up with some of the group of the Parkinson's people, and they're like, "What in the world are you taking? What dopamine are you on?" And I told them, my situation and what I was doing. And that's when the first person ordered the jar without a label and said, "You know what? I want that. Can you get it for me?" And I go, "I don't even have a label for the jar." Now it's become quite mature and has the label for the jar and the UPC code.
I love that logo.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's really cute. And we put MBR on there. And I did that because MBR standing for My Brain Restore, because some people might leave it out or something. And some people are embarrassed by these type of neurological conditions. So I knew this in my heart. And so MBR became what we put the biggest thing on there. Underneath it says My Brain Restore. But that's just so somebody doesn't look at it and go, "Oh, what's your My Brain Restore? What do you need that for?" They don't want to be embarrassed. So a lot of people hide from this. It's bad, but they don't need to. I don't.
Well, obviously not. I mean, and I just love the fact that there you are getting out there, with just like, okay, this is it. This is me. And this is, where I was. This is where I'm at. And this is where I'm going. And you can too.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's such a positive message of hope.
It is. And if it does what it does for those mice, in other words, cure Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia, then it's huge. It's huge for caregivers that have to work with those people and we tell everyone, whether it's the person taking it or whether it's the caregiver, make a chart of everything that's a problem today before you start. Give it a score of 10 if it's really bad, 0 if it's gone. And every month taking the My Brain Restore, make sure you go back to that and reassess that chart. Is the person improving? Now, I noticed, and most people notice, strength and balance first.
Wow.
Alzheimer's side, I noticed memory came back very fast. Other people reported different things. One of the more advanced people I have that have it, who I got to tell you, this person was so excited about what happened to him. He actually bought me airplane tickets to fly to his state, meet him at the airport so he could take me to dinner and sit down and talk to me and show me. He just was ecstatic about what happened because he had a pump. So he was using a dopamine pump. That's how bad he got to, right? But he said, I used to have to hit it every 3 times, I had to hit it every 3 hours. Then I went to every 6 hours when I started taking your product, then every 8 hours. And essentially, I'm weaning myself off this pump. And he goes, my doctor's freaking out. I'm freaking out. And I know it's working because I'm not using as much. And as I explained, which most of the doctors don't understand or know, a Danish scientist had discovered what was called the glymphatic system. Now, that's like the word lymphatic.
Yeah.
The glymphatic system, he coined it that or called it that. And if you Google it, you will find it. It was discovered by a Dutch scientist in 2012. And in 2013, they said, this is an aha moment. This is the dishwasher of the brain that we've discovered. And it clears out all these components, meaning it could work on traumatic brain injuries, it could work on brain fog, all sorts of things. And then I realized the mice experiments only did Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. And I'm realizing they dissected those mice and everything was gone. Well, the only place it could go was what the Dutch scientists had figured out. Wow. So once I put the 2 reports together, I realized in 2012, that's a pretty amazing, to discover a whole new system in the body. In 2012, that's a miracle in the sense of, didn't we know everything in the body already?
Well, we think we do, but
we think we do, but we learn things new every day. Right. But the problem with the Dutch group is they knew it was clearing these things out. They didn't know how to reverse it. And then when you look at the Japanese and what they did, you realize they knew how to reverse it, but they never read the Dutch report. And I read both and said, that's it. That's the combo. So how do I not get dissected and figure this out? And what I came up with was that because I had Alzheimer's, I had earlier taken in 2023 the beta amyloid 4240 test, which tells you how much beta amyloid is in your blood system. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, the only way it gets in your blood system is to go through that glymphatic system and dump into the veins, go down to the liver and be broken down. If the ratio is wrong, which mine was in the red, way wrong, then that's telling you that, that's a serious problem for Alzheimer's. Now, I had the Alzheimer's gene, so I knew that was kicking, wasn't helping any. And I don't attribute that to Camp Lejeune. That's genetic. But I said, okay, well, this is the way that I can quantify how it's working. And since I'd already taken that way before taking my brain restore, I asked my doctor to redo it. They said, no, once you fail it, you cannot reverse it. It's not reversible. So your insurance isn't going to cover it. So why am I going to do that? It's going to get kicked. So I called around to 10 online doctors. Of course, eventually get someone who said, sure, I'll write you a prescription. And they did. And I went down, got my blood work done. And according to Google, no one can reverse that either. I looked it up and it's impossible to reverse. Mine improved by 10%. I moved that needle. I'm the only person on the planet I know of that moved that needle. According to Google, I'm the only person. And believe me, I'm beating on the Alzheimer's Association to recognize me for what I've accomplished in that way. But sometimes association groups can be more interested in raising money for big pharma than they can paying attention to something obviously in front of them.
Right. Well, I mean, it doesn't benefit them if everybody gets better. I mean, you lose a pretty big chunk of income that way.
You lose your job.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's just so
unfortunately,
sad.
Unfortunately, that is true. And one of the reasons I was even in one study, and I've been in a couple different studies with NIH. I helped them be a control guinea pig for COVID, for long-term COVID. Mm-hmm. I was the control guinea pig. Mm-hmm. But doing that, they helped me discover Parkinson's because they did smell tests. And they said, wow, your smell is way off, and they thought it was maybe COVID related, but I hadn't gotten COVID. So, and they had
Hmm.
no antibodies. So they're like, okay, well, that's, you know, something else. Maybe that's Parkinson's. So that's what got me to go in that direction and learn more.
Hmm.
But yeah, totally amazing. And in my case, what this reversed for me, I did that test on October 13th, that blood work that showed that. And then just a week ago, I met with my doctor. She goes, I really can't see Parkinson's in you anymore. You're like zero point 0.5. You know, you have gone from stage 3 to stage 1 to I can barely detect it. And she goes, you're walking perfectly. Your strength is hard. Your balance. I mean, I feel like I go try to push you over, and you would hold your balance. Yeah, I would. She goes, I'm not going to do it.
I gotta ask, did she eat a little bit of crow?
Well, there was a huge smile on her face, and what she went for is actually in another direction. Is I'm going to talk to my partner and see if we might be able to talk to some of our other patients about using this.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And but she was so excited about it.
Mm.
It wasn't so much she ate crow as much as she was so like, you know, you got to understand, I'm watching you and I'm seeing all this, and I've never seen this happen in a patient, and I'm just, you know, it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
you're
almost
first.
unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure it would be difficult to wrap your head around that.
It would. No, especially when you see people all day long only go
Right.
get worse. Yes.
Right, right. But
Yes.
I mean, that must have given her like, a ray of hope and encouragement too.
Oh,
She
absolutely.
has
Yeah.
something now to offer to her patients.
Exactly. And this is moving on in the sense of an odd situation because we run the mybrainrestore.com website. We can see orders. And I started seeing somehow I must have gotten some medical form, a small one somehow, or one of my posts reposted. And all of a sudden I started seeing DRs in front of the name. And then when you see that DR in front of the name when they order, you're like, this is a doctor. And I got to speak to one person who reached out to me, who was one of the doctors. And he said, I'm a retired neurosurgeon and I have Parkinson's. And I said,
Whoa.
well, let me ask you a question. Why are you taking it? Because there's nothing else to take. Let's face it. That
Hmm.
drug that you give out, that neurologists give out and stuff, that's dopamine, was discovered in the 1960s. You know, it hasn't changed. Okay.
Right,
And unfortunately, you can't regulate it. So that if you
right.
take it, you might take too much or too little. There's no real way to know where you're at.
Hmm.
So I know as a neurosurgeon, the brain can repair itself if it's allowed to. And what you've
Right.
demonstrated is the ability to help clear it by the different research that you found and what's happening to you. And I'm following suit because there's nothing else. And I know this helps. And I can already feel it myself.
Wow.
And the next doctor I talked to actually was a PhD, but a doctor, you know, a doctor PhD. And she said something interesting to me. She said, I walk down this nature trail with my husband behind the house, and I have to hold his hand all the time because there's rocks and it's uneven.
Mhm.
And with my Parkinson's, I can't really stabilize myself too well. And she goes, after a couple of months of taking this, she goes, I did something, you know, a little scared, but I let go of his hand.
Mm.
And I walked back to the house by myself, not touching my husband's hand. And
Oh.
she goes, it's amazing. And I said, no, I'm sorry. I broke you two up.
Okay, Mark, I have got to ask you, how does that make you feel when you hear stories like that? And I mean, you're changing people's lives. What a gift you're giving them.
No, it's heartwarming. I mean, you know, it's amazing how far people will go. I mean, just like somebody flying me down to another state and meeting with that person, you know, buying
Right.
my hotel, everything, and spending time with me, having them meet their doctor and things like that, and them wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, you know, it's it feels amazing. You know, I never thought I'd be in this position. You know, I was used to writing databases for big companies. When we got done, everybody there would cheer and, oh my gosh, it works now. We
Mm-hmm.
can keep track of all our stuff. And so I was used to it on that level, but to change people's lives, to
Mm-hmm.
change where they think they're going, you know, in life, uh, is enormous. Because for me, with two of those neurological diseases, I
Right.
knew I was doomed. I mean, I didn't want to be a burden on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That was really there. And a lot of people get into that really depressed state.
Oh, yeah.
And I was getting there. And I'm not a depressed person, but you're like, I'm overwhelmed. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
caregivers that are overwhelmed. I helped someone with her husband had dementia and Parkinson's, dementia with Lewy bodies. And this is before I discovered this,
Wow.
which was a huge problem for him. They put him on a really bad drug that had hugely bad side effects, and eventually he passed away.
Oh.
But for her, she was constantly trying to take care of him. She was still trying to work because she couldn't, afford the house and everything.
Right.
And she didn't. The situation you get in is horrendous, and I saw that happen. And I wish I could have helped him. I really do. But now I can help others, and I feel really good about that. I feel that what we're doing, and I continue to be the guinea pig. I'm going to see another doctor here shortly. I'm like, give me tons of blood work, whatever you need to do. I post my liver panels up there, as you'd be familiar with, and I do that to show that it's not causing any liver issues or anything,
Mm-hmm.
which some supplements can. This is a very safe supplement. It's been around in 1 degree a long time. It's based on a fruit from a tree called Zizifa. Zizifa is a very odd fruit that has thorns on it and everything. It's a weird tree
Mm-hmm.
and or shrub, and it bears something like an apple, but very small. But in the United States, they grow them and they make them into hybrids. That doesn't work. Only one of the 100 different versions is what they tested in the mice.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a version that we get a hold of and use, and it's the only version that works. So don't go out there and buy ZC-Fob because you're going to get a bunch of different stuff that's not going to help you. And believe me, I've had somebody pull out ZC-Fob and say, this is it. And I'm like, no, that's a hybrid. And they're like, no. I said, tear the husk off it and everything. And look, there's no seed.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's not the right one.
So is it grows in China or in Japan?
Well, that was the interesting thing. It was a Japanese studying a Chinese plant, which I
Yeah.
thought was weird, right? You
Yeah.
think they'd be, in their own backyard, right?
Yeah,
But they
sure.
didn't. So before they even started this, they had to have an incline that this had some capabilities they wanted to grab. Again, they were paid for by Big Pharma, and they just couldn't figure out. In the end, their report clearly said, we thought we had it. We isolated all these molecules. We put it all together. No mice got better.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized they took the original thing they were giving the Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia mice. They gave it to the control mice in the end. They said, well, let's see what happens. And they were able to run the mazes 20% better. So in the end, they said this could help people with brain fog. This could help people who have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or dementia in their family. It could prevent it from ever even coming about.
That is one of the questions that has been in the back of my mind during this entire conversation. Can you take this prophylactically?
Yes, you can. And in prophylactic, what we mean is a preventive shield, so that this will, if in a sense, prevent you from moving into that position, because we believe that what it's doing is keeping that glymphatic system clear. And those chemicals that you run into, like going back to Camp Lejeune and TCE, most people do not realize that TCE is in brake cleaner fluid. It is in wig glue that you might glue on. It is in correction fluid for putting on paper. TCE was used throughout the United States in many industries. So the chance that you came in contact with that, or now lawyers are looking at paraquat, which are sprayed on farms, sprayed on golf courses, things like that. The Harvard University, I read part story that they had finished. They were seeing Parkinson's increase around golf courses, around farms, around industrial sites, because they all used different chemicals that was triggering the glymphatic system for some reason to shut down. That kept all the plaques and the components in the brain where they had nothing to do but destroy the dopamine cells. Wow. That's all they did. And so the thought is that by clearing it and having something actually that's not, and keep in mind, this is not, I would call it a regurgitated it's a little vitamin B6. It has some thiamine in it, and it makes a supplement. Everybody does that, right?
Right.
This is ZC5. Nobody has it in it. You can't find it, and you can't find it in the dosage we have. And that's the reason we do it in this, this way, and that scooper capability, because it does take 4 scoops, and we actually send a little piece of paper out here like this, and inside it is a little scooper. Okay.
Yes, I see.
So we make sure they get it's 4 of these a day. Basically, in the afternoon, the evening is better, and put it in with that pudding or something like that, whatever's called, because the glymphatic system, according to the Dutch, kicks in and starts working when you sleep. So another thought that I came up with too was buy a wedge pillow along with this. So the wedge pillow keeps you elevated, your head elevated a little bit while you sleep. It's going to help that drainage system work, get those things into the bloodstream where they can go to that liver and be broken down. So that works highly effectively. And here's the interesting thing. Out of everyone who buys a subscription, because most people buy subscriptions, they don't want to be without it. Matter of fact, I've had people scream at me when they're like, "Oh, I'm out of town. I forgot to bring my stuff. Can you FedEx it to me?" I'm like, "Sure, okay." No one's quit. Everyone's stayed on it, and they've been on it now over 6 months since I brought it out. But keep in mind, I've been on it a year, so I've had the opportunity to see more of its recovery point. But I think also people don't want to stop taking it. Their attitude is, no way do I want this back. Right. No way do I want to go back in this situation. Caregivers do not want that. If they can see, and one caregiver put it distinctly, if I could see a 10 or 20% improvement in my spouse that I take care of, that would be so powerful. Just that alone, that they could get up and maybe button their shirt or pick up something from a coffee table or something like that. The hardest part is tremors. I think tremors are the most difficult to get rid of. Mine have subsided, but they're still in my left hand. But you know what? I can live with a little tremor.
Now, for some reason, and you just triggered something in my brain when, because you were talking about
my brain restore.
There you go. Mine could use it. I mean, since my husband and I moved, a couple of months ago from Denver, Colorado to this little small town in Missouri, it's like both of us have kind of lost some brain cells because it's just been so overwhelming and stuff. But but anyhow, when you're talking about even picking up a cup or buttoning a shirt, which seems like such a small thing, but it really isn't. I mean, it's huge when you can, all of a sudden do that. And it just reminded me of a gentleman in Denver that I had worked with a little bit. He was actually a business coach who had MS.
Okay,
and
yes.
At the age of 30, and he had 2 small kids, 2 young boys. They told him, you got about 10 years.
Right.
And in 10 years, you'll either be dead or in a wheelchair or both. So just go home and enjoy the next 10 years. And, he's like, no, but what do I do? There's something I can do.
Right.
And of course, no, you can't do anything. So he ended up turning to meditation.
Right.
And, he's my age and he's still kicking, obviously, and still doing fine. But since what your product works on, Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's, would it impact something like MS?
People are buying it for MS. I can tell you that. I've had people call me and say, I want to try it. And their main point is they understand that it's the myelin sheath, I believe it is, around the nerve, that is causing the problem in MS. But they also point to brain issues that go along with it. So they are taking it. In the 2X version, and they're getting a subscription to it because of MS. So we haven't had any really early reports on that, but we do know that it, we have to understand that the Japanese only tested it with 3 neurological diseases. Right. But we know that I also have people taking it for long-term COVID. I have people taking it because they get foggy brain. Right. I have one person who had Lyme disease. So they're taking it for that because they got it really bad and they get really bad foggy brain. And again, the Japanese pointed out in the control mice who didn't have anything to improve their memory 20%. So it seems logical that it's doing something in those people. But those people, again, have subscriptions and have not turned anything off, which indicates to me that
I'm also thinking like chemo brain.
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
that a lot. And another,
Yeah.
I know somebody, a good friend of mine that I grew up with, has myasthenia gravis.
Okay.
I don't know how that would impact it, but I mean,
Well, I think, you know, I guess the best way to put it for me, it was worth a try to try
right.
to beat my Parkinson's. I think it's worth a try to understand that this, as it's the Dutch scientist coined it, it's the dishwasher of the brain. And he
Right.
actually used, or she used that word
Uh-huh.
later. And when you realize that it may be across the scale, we just haven't tested
Right.
on everything. But if I had those diseases or had those issues, would I
Hmm.
buy it and give it a 6 months try? You better believe it,
Yeah.
because if it works or gives you 10 or 20% back or more,
Yeah.
it's worth it, because it's a
Yeah.
lot cheaper than drugs. It has almost no side effects. We have
Right.
no, some of the side effects are a little strange, actually. We have one, I don't know how to put this, one caregiver who has a husband who has Parkinson's, and he also has skin cancer. He worked in the auto industry, so
Oh,
he
geez.
sprayed brake cleaner fluid every day.
Oh,
So,
geez.
he sprayed it on his skin, probably why he got skin cancer, and he breathed it in. Um, and she said, how do I put this? We haven't been intimate in over a year because of his condition. And before that, he was using Viagra. Okay. He started taking the My Brain Restore, and all of a sudden, he's attentive. Let's put it that way. And she said, I have to tell you, this is the first time we've been intimate in over a year. And he didn't
Wow.
take any Viagra or nothing. And she goes, how could that happen? I said, well, you have to understand that the brain's dopamine center is the pleasure center. I mean, when
Hmm.
dopamine's released, this may not be a side effect as much as it is. Some
Hmm.
people do take this as an
Hmm.
aphrodisiac type thing. We did not put it out that way, but it does
Wow.
seem like people are noticing it. I mean, I
Hmm.
noticed it, but I
Hmm.
just was like, I didn't say anything about it because I'm like, maybe that's just because I feel better. I don't know.
Hmm.
But when you see
Hmm.
other people doing the same thing, you're like, wow. So again, that means that the dopamine's producing
Hmm.
itself. Now,
Hmm.
the thing I caution people about is that if you're taking dopamine by your doctor, talk to them about this and cutting
Right.
back on this, because
Yeah.
I stopped taking dopamine because it wasn't working for me before I started these tests. So I tried to make the test as pure as possible
Hmm.
so I know this was the effect.
Right.
Most people shouldn't do that. They should continue to take your dopamine, but their
Hmm.
doctor needs to understand if the brain starts producing it on its own, and we have no meter, okay, to
Hmm.
test that, then they need to, start cutting back on it and
Hmm.
let that take over. The same as the person with the dopamine pump. He
Hmm.
noticed that within weeks
Hmm.
of taking it.
Hmm.
So that's pretty huge and pretty fast,
Hmm.
but that's a great thing. It
Yeah.
means your body's making it. Just like, Ozempic turns on the
Hmm.
pancreas to make,
Hmm.
insulin on its own, and you don't want to take insulin on top of it,
Hmm.
because now your body's confused by what's going
Right.
on. Same thing here, same point.
Okay. Now I want to pivot just a little bit, going
Sure.
back to, like, some of the toxins and stuff, because one really popped into my, caught my attention when I was reading your bio, was also the benzene.
Yeah. Yes.
And how toxic and horrible that is. And then of course you're talking about the guy who's working in the garage or the shop or whatever, spraying all that
Right.
stuff. Both my parents had leukemia, a very
Okay.
rare form of leukemia. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up outside of Pittsburgh, small steel town. My dad was a steel
Mm-hmm.
worker as well as a welder and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and a builder. He was a bricklayer. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was bizarre because my dad was diagnosed with this form of leukemia, and my mother was just like such a wreck that I was like, Mom, you're going to make yourself sick because you're worrying
Right.
so much. Well, about a year and a half, she was diagnosed with the same rare
Ah,
form of leukemia.
right.
And, she never went to college, but she was a very smart woman. And
Right.
she kept asking all of the doctors, this has got to be environmental. There has
Right.
got to be an environmental component here for, why did this happen to both of us? And they're like, oh no, it's just your cells are old and that's what's happened here. And she's like, well, then everybody in town ought to be walking around, with
Right.
leukemia. We're not the only old people.
Right.
But one of the things that they pinpointed it to was benzene.
Right. Right. And
And
you said your father worked around benzene and stuff like that, right? I mean,
well, he was a welder and he was a
okay.
steel worker.
Okay.
and he was a builder.
So I would assume I guess my take from that would be that that he brought home his clothing from that welding and everything, and your mom washed it.
That is so bizarre that you should say that, because that's exactly what my mother said.
Right.
She said
And
it
she's
must have
right.
been, that, daddy brought his work clothes home and I'm handling them, washing them and stuff. And it's like, and my sisters, like I said, I've got four sisters, and we're all thinking after they passed away in 2010, just 2 weeks
Hmm.
apart. And my sisters and I are like, if this was environmental, what about us?
Correct. Yes. Yeah,
And at
and you
this point,
don't. Yeah, things like Parkinson's or other damages, you have to be like 50% loss of all your dopamine cells before you even start seeing,
right.
the real parts of it. So you're already 50% into it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You don't see it coming.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to point out too was when you're talking about, it was on the skin and everything, and then, swimming in the
Right.
pool with all that contamination, is
Right.
that I think people didn't, I think they know now, but we didn't realize that, the skin is the largest organ in the body and
Correct.
how permeable it is.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
I remember my mom would clean, she would scrub the floor and do things. She never wore gloves.
Right. Right.
And she would clean brass, and when she would visit me, we have some brass, my husband and I, and she would use the brasso and
Yeah.
never wear
Brasso. Right.
gloves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
The
I'm like,
Marines.
Mom,
Yeah. Brasso was like in the back
yeah.
pocket.
It's like, don't you want some gloves? And she was like, no, that would be vanity. Or it was like, nah. Just I'm like, and then as
Exactly.
once they got the leukemia, I'm thinking, well, there could be a connection there.
Well, and if you think about it, if you take your hand here and stuff like that, and this is a non-Parkinson's hand for the most part, not too shaky. Oh, my mic is chasing my camera. Um, get it to follow me. Thank you. So the point is that if you take your hand or you go swimming or something like that, and you'll notice the wrinkles and stuff start to appear. Well, that's the absorption of over water, and of course you're getting the cells and stuff, concentrated water. You think about that with a chemical; it's doing the same thing. It's absorbing. And in my case, of course, my dad would go pick up the dry cleaning because he was a master sergeant, so he had to have those. Those
Right.
suits had to be perfect, right? Those uniforms had to be perfect. So he'd pick them up. I'd be in the back seat of the car, and I remember smelling that TCE smell on that uniform. I was in between two uniforms every
Oh
time I
my
got in the
God.
car. So I was like in a gas chamber. It was pretty bad.
All I could say is I think it's really a miracle, especially people of our generation, because we're born, just 2 years apart, that we managed to survive childhood.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it is.
It truly is a miracle. I mean, I almost fell off a roller coaster one time because, this was before they had the little
What's a
statue.
safety bar?
I was so tiny
Right.
that, and thank goodness my biggest, my oldest sister was with me. So we were in the same little car together. But it was this, the Mad Mouse was the name of the roller coaster at White Swan Park, right outside of Pittsburgh.
You're not going to ever forget that.
Oh God, no. But so Laura's in the car, and I'm between her knees or between her
Right.
legs, and we have the safety bar down, and I'm holding the safety bar. And it was great fun until we got to the end of the ride, because at the very end of the ride there's a series of bumps,
Humps.
each one a little bigger than the other. We hit the first bump, and I was so tiny that and skinny that we hit the first bump, and I flew up in the air and over the side of the car.
Oh,
And,
jeez.
my fingers are dangling. Laura's screaming. She's trying to reel me back in. And then we hit the
Mhm.
second bump, and I went up even higher and further out of the car. And I could see all of the, I'm looking down, you could see all of the adults, because it was a church picnic,
Right.
all of the adults running and screaming, and there's my mother, 7 months pregnant,
Oh,
running along, with her arms outstretched like she's going to catch me
got
when
you.
I
Yeah.
fall. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm really in deep trouble. I have never seen my mother run in my entire life, and here she is, and never saw her catch anything either. And by that time, the
So that worried you even more.
right. See? And the operator, saw what was happening, thank God. And, that's when they would manually slow him down. But yeah, so that was one of the times. And there had been a lot of other things too. Oh, yeah, a car came through our living room window when I was 4. So that was fun.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these things we go through tragically, and do and stuff like that. And you're always like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
I know, right? I can't believe survived that
Survive
one, but that is going to leave a mark.
it. Yep. And and I really think that, it's um about those experiences, when you have those, and I've certainly gotten some experiences, you get that close to I might die in this, type of thing. And it's strange because when you get something like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or dementia or any MS or any of these things, you're really faced with, I really am going to die. I mean, the doctor's not giving me any support here. They only spend 7 minutes with you on the average, and they got two other people in the other room. I get it. Okay. But they don't really want to try things new, and that's unfortunate. And even the foundations and stuff just want to support big pharma or do more research without really looking at, is there another way we could deal with this? And that's the part that bothers me, I think, the most, is that here's something that the Japanese proved. The Dutch scientists on the other side of the world almost, came up with the other idea how it works. And it all came together for me. I don't know. It's just the way I put it. Maybe it's database programming. Databases are all about relations, relational tables. And I just figured it out.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I did write it down and hopefully I could read my own handwriting this time. And it was something that you have like toward the end of your bio, I think. You say that the Japanese led to the discovery of a natural cure, and your American ingenuity invented the way to make it pure. And as a result, my brain restore was born.
Correct.
I mean, that's very poetic.
Thank you.
I absolutely love that. I had to write it down.
And very true. I mean, it was about that. That's how I felt. I guess I'm very emotional about it, for myself and my family, but also emotional that, now other people are, trying it and getting into it. I'm amazingly impressed that doctors are jumping in, but that tells me one thing: they know there's nothing else on the table. There's nothing else they could pull out of their medicine chest, because all they got to do is call one of their doctor friends and say, hey, prescribe me this. But they don't, and they can't. And so that right there, that support, although not seen by everyone, is huge. So yeah, I guess for me, it's a game changer. I mean, I feel like I'm 30. I can't describe it. It's this odd. I mean, I went up on a 20-foot ladder and cleaned the gutters before the winter hit. My wife is freaking out. Okay.
I was going to say, I'm sure your wife wanted to kill you.
Yeah. Actually, she was going to knock the ladder out first, just to show me it does hurt when you fall down. But don't forget that. Just because you haven't done it lately doesn't mean it. Well, and the other thing on the Alzheimer's, I had to show that, and I actually brought up my wife. I got this kids memory game. Okay. And let's see if this thing will follow me back. There we go. And I got this kids memory game, and I ordered it from Amazon for $12, and it has 36 different animals. You can't see them. And I told my wife, because she knew I was getting really bad with Alzheimer's, but I said, I've been taking the My Brain Restore long enough. I'm feeling pretty sharp. I'm remembering why I go in the room. I don't get lost. Remember where I put my keys, all these kind of things. And I said, I want to play this memory game because she's 15 years younger than me. And she's sharp, right? So we set the game out, 36 different animals. We mixed it all up. And she goes, I'm going to embarrass you. I'm just going to slaughter you. I don't really want to do it. But she goes, okay. But once she gets going, then she gets aggressive, right?
Of course.
She did her best. That's all I can say. At the end, I had all the stack of maxed animals on my side, and she didn't. She goes, that's it. I don't want to play anymore. I'm not playing ever again.
I'm taking my marbles and I'm going home. Oh,
that's
yes,
exactly
we live
what
in
she
the
did.
same house.
Yeah. And unfortunately for me, I still had my marbles.
Oh my gosh. Mark, this has been so much fun. I have just loved this conversation, but there are a few more things we need to talk about. You wrote a book.
I did. Yep. For your audience, it's available up on mybrainrestore.com, and they can click on the PDF, or they can click on FAQ, then the free PDFs. And if they click on that, that will allow them to download the book for free. We're putting it up on Amazon. It'll be up there. was on eBay, but we're working to reclassify it, so it'll go back up on eBay. But don't buy it. Just go to the site. Don't do that. Because I give it away free because to me, I'm not trying to make money on a book. I'm trying to explain how we got to this point. And all the there's a lot of scientific study in there from different universities, all pointing in the same direction. What I did was glue them together in the book, to show people. So definitely go up there, grab the book, read it. It also has a coupon code in there called ebook10. And if you put in ebook and then the number 10 as a code when you check out, you actually get 10% off. So that's another freebie out there that people can use to buy the product. I take the 2X product daily, and I don't stop, taking it, and don't recommend people do. If they're beating it, continue beating it. But the book is out there, yeah, definitely, and I encourage everybody to read it first, and then my journey that's on the website is updates. So when I get my new medical updates, because we can't update the book all the time, we put the new updates will be under my journey to continue on that story of that book.
Okay, excellent. So I have to ask you this question. When you were let's go back, at the beginning, and when you were, going through this process and you were getting worse and worse and worse, and this is what you were dealing with, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. If you could have looked into the future, or if somebody went to you and said, Mark, this is what's going to happen. This is where you're going to be. This is what you're going to do. And you're going to save the lives of thousands of people. What would you have said?
I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, not when I first started. For me, that's why I kept it quiet for 6 months. I didn't tell anybody. I said, I got to prove to myself that this is going to go from mice to man. Maybe like that book, but in a different direction, of mice and men. And I just needed to understand it and try to figure it out myself. And I also had to figure out the dosage. The dosage given to mice is way different than the dosage to humans. So I had to really figure out where were the tolerances, how could I make it in what we call an ultra chill milled fashion? This required making a mill that could go down to very low temperatures, not normally used, so that it would preserve all the oils and components of the seed that we're grinding down. So I had to go through a lot of that first to try to get it to a point where it maintained its palatability and everything. But I think if someone had said at that point, do you think this would cure everybody or fix all these problems? I would have said no. But now, having people fly me down to see them and doctors jumping online, it's like, whoa, I hit it out of the ballpark, and not to mention I took care of 2 of my neurological diseases at the same time. So my faith in it, that it will help other people with other diseases and foggy brain. And keep in mind, everybody's trying it for different reasons. And we're waiting for those results to start coming back. But I believe it will. And so now I have, a great faith that it's going to help people all around the world. I have people in other countries, 6 different countries now that are trying to order it. And we're still trying to catch up, getting it out and keep up with supply and demand in the US, but other countries are already jumping in, with people going, I'll take it, I want to get it to me. And I think what was brought up by a number of people is like, maybe you have it priced too low, but I'm like, no, I like where it's priced, but they're like, no, you don't understand. This changes lives, I mean, this is amazing. And they don't have anything else to turn to. And you're helping caregivers, you're helping families. Because people with dementia can get quite angry, and people get pulled away from them. I don't want to be near dad. He's like nuts, and if you can reverse that or make that calmer or better, wow, what help that would give the whole family. So to me, I'm inspired by all those components. Those are huge to me.
Well, you're helping
watching my friend die and the caregiver, that was heartbreaking for me. Yeah, that was huge.
Well,
and I tried to.
You're helping future generations.
Well, we may be helping future generations from ever getting it. I think that's the
Right.
important thing. The TCE was the thing I ran into was only banned in the United States in December of 2024. It stays in the soil for a long time. Europe had banned it years before. America kept it running and did not stop it. So that means it's still in people's garages and brake cleaner fluid. That means it's
Oh,
still in all over the place. It's in paints. It's in all sorts of things. So we got to realize this chemical exposure will go on for years. And you can imagine somebody digging up an old factory or something. They're going to re-expose that chemical, airborne it, aerolize it. And they're not going to be able to smell it. There's no detectors for it. So you'd have to analyze it, the soil each time. Well, you're not going to know if you take off the surface and everything's fine and you dig a little deeper, then boom, you hit it.
oh.
So, and now it's advanced into weed killers and things like that.
Mhm.
People in the industry, in the garden industry and stuff like that, landscaping, have noticed higher Parkinson's rates. All this is coming that these chemicals, and now we have forever chemicals, which we don't know if it would help on. But
Right.
again, if all these things are getting stuck by that one system, and that if we clear it and get the liver to do its job, and I
Mhm.
proved that the liver functions do not go up. As a matter of fact, those were the best liver functions I ever had.
Wow.
I'm not going to say that did that.
Mhm.
I don't think so. But the fact that my liver functions weren't high was meaning they probably weren't being irritated,
Mhm.
by the original chemicals and stuff that I was exposed to.
And tell us one more time what the name of that lymphatic or
It's
uh,
glymphatic.
glyme.
Glymphatic. So if you take the word lymphatic and add a
Uh-huh.
G,
Uh-huh.
and if you look that up, if you say glymphatic system, you could put Dutch in there too, because it was a Dutch female scientist that discovered this with her
Okay.
team in 2012,
Okay.
and it was considered an aha moment in 2013. They were literally like, "This is amazing." There's a whole new system in the bloodstream we didn't know even existed in the brain, and they figured it out. And actually, weirdly enough, in May of 2025, a US group also discovered it in another animal. They had animals that were acting like they had Alzheimer's, and they couldn't figure out why, because these animals were distributed in different places in different countries and they weren't having the
Mhm.
same problem. So they got into the animals and tried to figure out what, and these were small animals, I think they were spiders or something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, but the point being is they started dissecting them and realizing that these things were not getting cleared out of the brain. And once they realized that, they literally, in their case, changed their temperature, and then the glymphatic system started working for those animals, and they no longer had the Alzheimer's. They couldn't spin
Wow.
webs, I think, and things like that. They
Mhm.
forgot. But once
Wow.
they cleared it, then they could spin their webs and do what they normally do. Otherwise, they'd make a misrepresented web. It wouldn't look right. It wouldn't look
Right.
spiral and things like that. So that was May of 2025, very recent. So
Wow.
this hasn't gotten out much, but I don't think baby boomers have the time, nor do any, or do their caregivers to sit around and wait 10
Mhm.
years for someone to come out and get an FDA approved drug and spend $2.5 billion, as Michael
Mhm.
J. Fox says it costs to bring out a new drug, when we
Mhm.
have something here that's natural, as long as it's made right and taken right, which we're very careful about. We
Mhm.
source our seeds only from people we trust as vendors,
Mhm.
because some things you buy from China, you never want to buy a ground powder that looks like this from China.
Right.
You got no idea what's in it. We buy the seeds. We buy them directly, essentially almost from the farmers who make
Mhm.
them. We get them in, we quality test them. My wife has a green thumb. She actually grows a portion of them. So we make sure
Uh-huh.
they're fresh, new,
Mhm.
and will germinate at the right way
Mhm.
we're looking at. And I give that part to her. She's good at it.
Mhm.
And we know that they're proper for what we need, and
Right.
then they're ground, and then from that point we put like a 4 month shelf life on them, because you don't want these organic components of it and oils to start to dissolve. And that's another reason we use this foam top. So instead of having a seal on here that, like a
Mhm.
Parkinson's person, I couldn't get it off with a pair of pliers before if I tried. We don't use those kind of seals. We use a resealing jar, which
Mhm.
costs us more. But once you lock it down, it keeps all this, nice and fresh.
Mm-hmm.
and they should use it within 30 days anyway. In their subscription, that's the way they should be using it. But people sometimes forget. But the whole point was to make a good product, a quality product, and to make sure that we had a pure product and made in the right way. That took a lot, but
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Oh, to make one of these is 1,800 seats. So we ship in 2X. They get this. That's 6,000. That's 3,600 seats that they get. Okay,
Wow.
so they get 2 of these jars. They take four of those scoops a day in that pudding or yogurt or whatever, and they go. And that's all they.
One more time. Lift up the jar, especially the one that has the logo on it.
Yeah, I got one here too.
There you go. Okay. That's for the YouTubers.
Yeah, mybrainrestore.com. This is the 2X version where you get 2 jars. The same ingredient. Whether you get preventive or you get this one, if they get preventive, they get 1 jar. Okay. Okay. If they get 2 jars, then they're getting the 2X, which is just 2 times. We don't change the formula. The formula is the same. We do put it's 99% ZC5 of a special cultivator version, but we also make 100% version because we send some overseas, and overseas gets a little picky about other things being added in. So the people can actually pick the pure version if they want. It's for international or US. Some people prefer it and they want to take their own other supplements with it. That's fine. Doesn't matter. Either way, they're getting the full strength of the product.
Well, it just sounds like, I don't want to say miracle drug, and I'm not going to say miracle cure, but it is just sounds like an incredible product. And again, bringing hope,
where there was none.
Yeah. And I think
You know
that's
what I mean?
the worst thing anybody could do is take away somebody's hope.
Yes. And that's how I felt. Having 2 of these diseases. I mean, with 1, I was like, okay, maybe I can manage it. But 2, it's like, I'm done. I mean, what am I going to do? And now, again, turning that around to the level I've turned it around, and I'm already seeing it from other people, but they haven't taken as long as I have. All I can say is you've got to stick with it. It's important to take it every day. It's important to do everything, log everything. That's all very important, because if you're going to beat something, you got to fight. And then anything, my dad was a master sergeant in the Marine Corps. He said, if the enemy's attacking you, take out the enemy first, And I always remember that, right?
Yeah. So, okay, we've got all of the, tell the audience how they can get a hold of you, how they can contact you, find your information. All of this stuff is already in the show notes, and it's going to stay there forever and ever. But I really like for the guests to be able to articulate it. You've already given us a lot of information, but keep saying it again. I don't get tired of hearing it.
They can go to mybrainrestore.com. When they go there, they're going to be able to read a lot. They're going to be able to click on the products and purchase them. And today the website's running a little slow. I think we might be getting a little overburdened today because a couple people said it's really dragging. I'm like, sorry, we put out some other information. I think people were reading the book. So if you get a problem or an error, keep in mind on the website, there is a phone number there. We are unlike most any other supplement company. We put our phone number there. You get me or you get my assistant, no AI involved in that. We believe in talking to our people and we like them to share their stories with us. So mybrainrestore.com, phone number's there. We have a contact page, mark@mybrainrestore.com. Will get us by email. And share your story. If you're any anticipation, call us. Use the coupon ebook 10 so you can get your discount code. If you didn't write it down, call us. We'll give it to you. No problem. We're here every day. That's one thing. We're committed 7 days a week to answering that phone.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show. I have loved this conversation, and I'm just so amazed and so impressed with everything that you're doing. And I love the way that you took your, science-based brain and used it to heal yourself.
You're correct. Absolutely.
And now all the other people that you're helping all over the world.
Yes. And I want to help more. I really do. I want to see this become something. Michael J. Fox put it quite well one day, and he said, I'd love to shut down this organization. And he meant it in the way, I'd love to find a cure. And I'd love to get it to him, but he's blocked by all his people, unfortunately,
Oh,
because they're all just, I mean, they lose their job, and I understand,
right.
okay, because they're out to raise money.
Yeah.
And I get that, but we have something here. Why aren't
Mhm.
we testing it further? Why isn't Michael J. Fox group or Parkinson's group or Alzheimer's group, in my
Right.
opinion, getting involved and saying, let's put this through some human trials of our own groups? Go ahead. I'll help support it. But we
Well,
plan to do our own human trials. We're working with some other doctors that are also interested in doing that. But I ain't going to wait for the human trials, and no one should. If you got
right.
it, you're your own human trial. If it makes you better and you feel better after it, and your partners and everything feel better, you just proved it to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being on the show. What I would love for you to do is to keep in touch with me. I mean, it's not like you don't know how
Sure.
to find me. Because once this thing starts getting bigger and reaching more and more people, I would love for you to come back and kind of give us an update.
Sure. Well, I can tell you one thing to your guests. If people are willing, and this is how far we'll go, if
Okay.
some of the people are willing to photograph themselves, and I mean make a video of themselves, and I already have one person who has bad tremors and has Parkinson's. He's filming himself. His partner is. And I said, you film yourself, you do that for 6 months. We'll give you a discount to get the product. They have to call us for this.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, if you get better and you give us the film of, a testimonial and show us how well that person's giving, I'll pay for your entire amount you got. I'll reimburse
Wow.
you.
Wow.
So if people reach out and they're willing to do that, but they have to, give us the model rights to do that,
Right.
because those testimonials, not just from me, but from other people, are important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks. Pardon me. Thank you again for being here.
Sure.
And it's just an honor to meet you. And yeah, having that baby boomer conversation too is a lot of fun.
Yeah. The bronze baby shoes were the killer there.
Well, we never got bronze baby shoes because
I did. My
well,
mom did it.
there were five of us.
Oh,
So,
I see why.
I think,
Bronze
yeah,
wasn't that cheap.
I think my oldest sister may have had a pair. I don't know, but he's like, oh,
Uh,
my friends had these bronze baby shoes, and it's like, well,
right.
I didn't get any, but yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Mark, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate it too. Thank you for having me on. This is a great discussion, and I hope that your people watching do improve. I really do.
I'm sure they will. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And please share this episode with everybody you know, especially if you know of somebody who's suffering with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, or any other kind of neurological disease. Check out Mark's website. I was there today and I could have been there all day long. He's got so much information, a lot of stuff to learn. And remember to take your power back and take it into your own hands. The experts don't always have all the answers, and let's just leave it right there. So you're in charge of your own health. Do your own research and check out Mark's website. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.